Always good to speak to someone from ASIC, and especially to speak to the Commissioner, Greg Tanzer. Nice to see you back at SPAA.
Great to see you again. It's a pleasure to be here, actually.
Yeah, have things changed much for you as far as SMSFs are concerned?
Yeah, it's been a pretty busy 12 months for ASIC in the SMSF space, and that really just reflects the growth and importance of this sector. You know, superannuation, I heard today, is nudging now up to $1.8 trillion in assets. Trillion.
Yeah.
If you say it quickly, it doesn't sound like very much.
No, it always sounds like a lot.
It's a lot of zeros, but and the SMSF sector in that, of course, continuing to grow. I think the tax office was saying something today like average 38,500 new funds, you know, a month or so.
A month?
It's extraordinary how.
Right.
I better check on that figure.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're up to something like over 500,000 funds and nearly 1 million members in SMSF funds. So that's a substantial proportion of the Australian population.
And I suppose it makes a substantial amount more work for you to make sure that it's all run correctly.
Yeah, look, our role with respect to SMSFs is that we really want to focus on the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are advisors, financial advisors and accountants who might be involved in the setup or giving people advice about running their SMSF. It's the people who produce many of the financial products that SMSFs invest in. And critically now, it's the auditors of the SMSF funds themselves. They're all people that we have some sort of interaction with or directly regulate.
Yeah, but there's also like there's also an extraordinary amount of work for them as well. And I mean, that's gone up exponentially as, you know, the amount of funds that goes up as well.
Absolutely. You know, the responsibility that comes with managing that level of funds and the importance of superannuation to every Australian.
Yeah.
You know, it's an incredibly important sector, and sometimes we lose sight of this is about our retirement into the future, but not only that, it's actually about not just our lives as we retire, but productively using that time that we've got in retirement and the funds leading up to it.
Yeah, because I mean, I know I've got an SMSF, and I don't think about retirement yet. I'm just going, I've just got to make as much money as possible.
Sure.
Because I'm still young enough to know that it's just about.
Well, I'm glad you're young enough. I'm kind of getting over that now. But you're right. There's quite distinct sectors. I think that there's been a lot of attention given to the accumulation phase, which is what you're in, and people coming to a better appreciation of the need to try to structure, put in as much as they feel comfortable, but then stay engaged with their super so that they understand what's growing for them and what's not. And I think the key in that area is just to make sure that you keep focused on the fact that this is a long-term investment.
Yeah. What are the priorities for ASIC for 2014?
Look, there's a couple that I'll mention. The first is, I mentioned SMSF auditors before. We became responsible at the start of 2013 for registering SMSF auditors, and this was all about trying to raise standards in the industry. And we think that that's happened. The standards that have been set in the legislation are not especially high standards, but they are standards. They're not especially high. They're meant to be a floor, not a ceiling, right? So the whole idea is...
Does everyone know that?
Yeah, well...
is that pretty straightforward?
I keep telling people that, well, it's not straightforward that everybody can be an SMSF auditor.
No.
But it's not a very high standard. And I guess what I encourage is don't rest on your laurels.
Yeah.
The fact that you've met the ASIC standard doesn't mean that you can, you know, put your hands behind your head and rest and think that you know about everything to do with SMSFs. There's a lot of change, and even within what you know, there's a lot of better development that you can come to.
And I think that's one of the things about the conference this year. It's a constant change.
Absolutely. And there's a number of associations and professional bodies in the field that offer really very good training and education courses for people interested in the field. And I strongly encourage people to stay engaged with their professional development.
What about properties and SMSFs?
Yeah, this is a very important topic and something really well worth focusing on. We've seen a rise in some pretty aggressive advertising around really targeting SMSF investors, and some of the worst of the advertising that we've seen is around spruiking property.
Or the best of the advertising.
Well, some would argue that it's very effective.
Very good.
It's very effective and very attractive advertising. I guess the key point with that is that your superannuation through your SMSF, because you're responsible for making the investment decision, it's far too important a deal, it's far too important an issue for you and for your future to be making snap decisions. And the property spruikers are typically characterised by high pressure sales tactics, a lot of mumbo jumbo, and trying to build you into making a snap decision. So our point about property spruikers is that this is far too important a sector to become the plaything of property spruikers. I
suppose on the plus side for self-managed super funds, it's not that easy to get a property into the fund anyway. So there's sort of a small insurance policy there.
Sure, I think so, but I come back to the point that Australian investors really are interested in property. Many of us, back in the old days, of course, the first investment we would have got was our car, but we can't talk too much about our Australian cars at the moment. But for many investors, the big investment that they make through their life is their family home, and for many, the second investment that they think about is an investment property. Whereas, the reality is that superannuation is your biggest nest egg going forward, particularly for the younger generation.
Right. So let's talk about people getting into self-managed super funds, because there's obviously, it's great for some people to get newbies in, even if they can't afford it because it's a new client. And so what are you guys saying is the right sort of level or entry level for self-managed super funds?
This is another very important topic and something that we've spent a lot of time on over the last 12 months. Really 2 points that I make about that, Andrew. One is, the basic proposition is that SMSFs can be a fantastic investment vehicle, but you need to have the skills and competence to manage these investments yourself. SMSF stands for self-managed. That means that you've got to have the skills and experience to set your investment strategy and to stay the course. And for many people, actually, that's not just them. The second part of that, or part of that consideration, is the cost. Setting up an SMSF is not trivial. There are taxation requirements, there are accounting requirements, there are auditing requirements that you need to meet. And so all of that admin that floats around that is also costly. And if you compare the cost of setting up and maintaining your SMSF to the costs that might be absorbed within a larger fund, an APRA-regulated fund that might do it, particularly for small balance funds, anything that's worth under $100,000, we've had some independent research that says, look, really, basically, just on a pure dollar-for-dollar basis, it's not worth doing. I hasten to add, if you're really interested in your super, if you're about to come into an inheritance, if you're the sort of person who's expecting to be able to add to that pot in a few years, $100,000 isn't a strict cut-off line by any means. And some in the industry would argue that actually the number should be a lot larger before you think about an SMSF.
Yeah, I think the number bandied around is generally around the 200, 250, and that's the entry level.
Yeah, I think what's also interesting in this field is that over the last 12 to 18 months in particular, we've seen a lot of competition in the SMSF sector, including from the big established funds who are looking just to provide an SMSF-like product. So they'll do the administration for you now for a much lower cost, which is driving down some of those costs of running an SMSF.
Okay, anything else we need to be thinking about from an ASIC point of view?
Look, the main thing with SMSFs, and it's particularly directed to the investor, is this is a fantastic opportunity, but it's a very big responsibility, and take that responsibility seriously.
Good advice. Good on you, Greg.
Thanks, Andrew.
Nice
Cheers.
to chat again.